The most dangerous man in any room is not the one with the most gold. It is the one who refuses to see himself as lacking anything at all, while others count their coins and measure their worth by material possessions. The true Machiavellian understands a principle so powerful that it can turn beggars into kings and transform empty hands into instruments of influence. This is not about positive thinking or self-help fantasy. This is about the cold, calculated psychology of power that separates rulers from the ruled. Even when you possess nothing but your mind, the first treasury a man ever builds is not made of gold, silver, or land. It is his mind. The mind is the vault from which every kingdom, every empire, every fortune is born. Yet most men treat their minds like beggars treat coins. They hold them for a moment, then throw them away without thought. They do not understand that the greatest wealth is not possession, but perception, not ownership, but the ability to create something from nothing. I have seen the poorest men in Florence walk with such certainty that others mistook them for nobles. And I have seen nobles so empty in thought that even their gold could not save them from ruin. What separated them was not circumstance, but mentality. One believed he was rich in potential, the other believed he was poor in opportunity. And in the game of power, belief is everything. The man who knows how to think, to analyze, to plan, can turn failure into advantage, loss into strength, and poverty into strategy. When your mind is sharp, every obstacle becomes a tool, every rejection becomes direction. But when your mind is dull, even fortune cannot help you. You will squander every chance because you lack the discipline to see beyond the moment. Consider this: every palace, every ship, every piece of art began as an invisible thought. It existed nowhere but in the imagination of a man who refused to see limitation. That man, even before he touched gold, was already rich, because he owned the one thing no one could take: a mind capable of building worlds. When you are surrounded by difficulty, it is tempting to believe that you are powerless. But the wise man understands that pressure is the test of sovereignty. Your current condition is not a reflection of your worth, but of your focus. If your thoughts are consumed by lack, you will only see more of it. But if your thoughts are shaped by control, by strategy, by purpose, even the smallest resources begin to multiply. There are two kinds of poor men: those who seek pity and those who seek mastery. The first spends his life begging for relief. The second spends his nights in silence, sharpening his mind, studying those above him, observing the hidden rules that govern human behavior. He learns how men think, how they fear, how they move, and slowly, he turns his insight into influence. By the time the world notices him, it is too late. His poverty has already transformed into power. You must understand this truth: intelligence is not given, it is built through isolation, curiosity, and discipline. When you are poor, you are gifted something the powerful have lost: hunger. The hunger to learn, to evolve, to outthink those who rely on status. The rich man grows lazy, distracted by comfort, but the hungry man grows sharp. He watches, listens, waits, and then acts with precision. That is the true treasury of a ruler. Not money, but the ability to shape destiny through thought. Every time you choose to learn instead of complain, you are minting mental gold. Every time you study your failures instead of mourning them, you are forging armor for the future. Every time you observe the moves of others and calculate their intentions, you are collecting the invisible currency of power. And when the day comes that fortune finally offers you opportunity, you will be ready to command it, because you already trained your mind to see what others miss. The poor man who masters his thoughts becomes more dangerous than the rich man who controls nothing but servants. Wealth without intellect is fragile. It collapses at the first sign of chaos. But intellect without wealth is a seed, patient, waiting, and inevitable. And just as the seed becomes the forest, the intelligent mind will always grow into power, no matter how barren the soil. So guard your mind as a king guards his treasury. Fill it with wisdom, not complaint. Feed it with discipline, not distraction. For in the grand design of power, the mind is the first weapon, the first fortress, and the first fortune you will ever own. Power is never only what you have. It is what others believe you have. The appearance of strength can be more valuable than strength itself. When a man seems unshaken by loss, the world begins to question whether he can truly be defeated. This illusion, this mask of control, is what separates those who rise from those who vanish in the shadows of humiliation. You must understand, people do not follow the strongest man. They follow the man who appears unbreakable. I have seen generals lose entire battles, yet still command loyalty, simply because they refused to show fear. I have seen merchants bankrupt one day, only to regain investors the next, because they walked with the same calm and confidence as when their coffers were full. It was never their wealth that convinced others. It was the performance of certainty. When you look composed while everything burns around you, you become a mystery, and mystery breeds respect even from those who doubt you. When misfortune strikes, most men crumble publicly. They confess their weakness, they complain, they expose their wounds to the world. But a man of strategy understands that showing despair is an invitation for predators. Weakness attracts domination. It signals to others that you are ready to be conquered. But when you carry yourself with quiet composure, even when the world suspects your ruin, you turn vulnerability into power. Others hesitate, unsure if you are truly defeated, and in hesitation you gain time. Time is everything. It is the bridge between disaster and recovery. The one who remains calm while the storm rages silently begins to rebuild, to plan his next move while his enemies are still celebrating his fall. It is in those silent moments, when everyone assumes you are finished, that you regain control. You must learn to act as though fortune has never betrayed you, as though loss has not touched your soul. Because in truth, fortune only destroys those who let the world see their surrender. To appear powerful, you must master your face, your tone, your presence. Even your silence must speak of control. A man who panics becomes noise, a man who endures becomes a symbol. And symbols rule more effectively than armies. Your calmness in crisis can command loyalty more than your success ever could. Men will gather around you, not out of pity, but out of belief. The belief that if you remain steady, you must know something they do not. The mind of the powerful works like this. When loss arrives, he does not announce it. He buries it beneath confidence, behind the mask of purpose. He allows rumors to swirl, lets the world guess at his position, and in that uncertainty, he becomes untouchable. The appearance of control is a fortress stronger than walls. People do not challenge what they do not understand. They hesitate to strike what seems unshaken. There was a man I once knew in Florence, a merchant who lost everything overnight when his ships sank in a storm. His friends abandoned him, his rivals celebrated. Yet the next morning, he walked through the city with his head high, dressed in his finest coat. He greeted his rivals with warmth, as though nothing had changed. He spoke of new ventures that did not exist, of trade deals that had not yet been made. The world believed him. Within months, new investors appeared, drawn by his composure. What he had lost in gold, he regained through appearance. His power returned because his mind never surrendered to poverty. Understand this, the performance of stability is not deceit. It is survival. When you appear powerful, you buy yourself influence. When you act confident in the face of disaster, you signal to others that you cannot be destroyed easily. And when others begin to believe it, they start to treat you differently, with caution, respect, and sometimes even fear. This illusion becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even when you have nothing, dress your spirit in dignity. Speak as though you have the world in your hands. Walk as if you own the ground beneath your feet. Because perception creates momentum, and momentum attracts opportunity. When people see you as someone who cannot be shaken, They will offer you doors that remain closed to the desperate and the defeated. Every prince, every ruler, every man who has risen from the dirt has mastered this art, the ability to act as if loss is beneath him. Do not forget, power is not only taken by strength, it is given through belief. Make others believe in your stability, and you will find that the world bends toward you again. For as long as you appear powerful, no one will dare to treat you as poor. When a man has nothing left to lose, he becomes something the world cannot predict, and what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. Desperation, though feared by most, is a weapon sharper than any sword. The common man sees desperation as ruin, the strategic man sees it as rebirth. For when fortune strips away your comforts, your pride and your illusions, it leaves behind the raw essence of who you are, and that is where true power begins. Most people crumble when they lose everything because they have built their identity on possessions, approval, or position. They confuse wealth with worth, applause with power. But the moment all of that disappears, you stand naked before yourself. That is the moment of truth. You can either die in the ashes of self-pity or rise from them as something far more dangerous. A man who fears nothing. Because once a man stops fearing loss, he becomes untouchable. You cannot threaten one who has already faced the worst. You cannot control one who has nothing left to protect. Desperation breaks the chains of hesitation. It burns away the vanity that weakens most men. When you have nothing, you begin to act with purity, with a kind of ruthless clarity that comfort never allows. You stop asking for permission, you stop waiting for opportunity, and you start creating it. That hunger, that raw defiance is what builds empires. The comfortable man never creates history. The desperate man does. In my life, I have watched men who were cornered turn into lions. I have seen peasants overthrow lords, exiles become leaders, and ruined merchants rebuild greater fortunes. All because their desperation forced them to act without fear. When a man is desperate, his instincts sharpen. He sees through lies, through distractions, through illusions of limitation. His focus becomes absolute. The world mistakes that focus for madness, but it is not madness. It is freedom. The kind of freedom that only comes when you have lost everything unnecessary. Desperation is not chaos. It is the cleansing fire of transformation. It strips away the weak parts of your character, the doubt, the hesitation, the desire for comfort. When you are desperate, you learn that no one is coming to save you. That realization can crush the weak, but it creates greatness in the strong. Because when you stop expecting rescue, you begin to build your own power. You stop seeking sympathy, and instead, you cultivate strategy. You start to look at your pain not as tragedy, but as fuel. Every ruler, every conqueror, every great thinker in history has known moments of desperation. They were all forged in darkness. But what made them different was how they used that darkness. The weak drown in it. The strong mold it into armor. When everything is taken from you, you are forced to answer a single question: what remains of you when there is nothing left? That answer defines your future. A desperate man does not wait for ideal conditions. He acts now because he knows time is the only wealth he cannot afford to lose. He takes risks others avoid. He learns quickly because failure is no longer a threat. It is a routine part of survival. Every mistake becomes a weapon, every loss becomes a lesson. He adapts, transforms, and evolves faster than anyone who still believes they have something to protect. That is why the world secretly fears the desperate. They are impossible to control, unpredictable, and willing to do what others will not. You must never pity your desperation. It is not a curse. It is a call to awaken the parts of yourself that comfort has kept asleep. When you are desperate, your creativity explodes, your perception sharpens, your willpower hardens. You start to see the truth, that most people are imprisoned by the illusion of safety. They live small lives because they are terrified of losing them. But you, if you learn to harness your desperation, will live differently. You will act from strength, not fear. You will no longer ask, "What if I lose?" but rather, "What can I gain if I no longer care about losing?" This is the paradox of power. Those who have nothing to lose possess the greatest leverage. The world bends to those who cannot be intimidated, because power is not only about wealth or resources. It is about will, and a desperate will is indestructible. The man who has nothing may appear broken, but in truth he is freer than kings, for his courage no longer has a price. The rich are not to be hated, they are to be studied. Hatred blinds the poor, but observation empowers them. Every man of wealth is a fortress of information, and within those walls lie the weaknesses, fears, and desires that can be used to your advantage. The foolish poor man spends his time cursing the rich, blaming fate for his misfortune. But the wise man watches silently, learning the patterns of power, because every powerful man, no matter how high he stands, fears something. Find that fear, and you will find the key to influence. The world teaches you to worship the rich or resent them. Both are errors. To worship them is to accept inferiority. To resent them is to reveal envy. The intelligent man does neither. He approaches the wealthy with the mind of a hunter, respectful, patient, and strategic. He asks, "What keeps this man awake at night? What does he protect most fiercely? What image does he fight to preserve?" Every rich man guards something: reputation, comfort, admiration, legacy. The one who discovers which of these chains binds him can control him without ever lifting a sword. In Florence, I once observed a nobleman who appeared untouchable. His estate stretched across the hills, his name carried weight in every hall. Yet beneath his confidence was a quiet desperation, the fear of losing the admiration of others. He would spend fortunes to maintain appearances, to be seen as generous, wise, and beloved. One of his servants understood this weakness. The servant began to flatter him not with empty words, but with carefully crafted suggestions that played to his pride. In time, the nobleman trusted him deeply, and through that trust, the servant rose in power. He did not rebel, he did not fight, he ruled quietly through the rich man's vanity. Power does not always belong to the man who holds the gold. Often, it belongs to the one who understands how that gold moves, how it influences decisions, and how it manipulates desire. If you have no wealth, then become the mind that guides those who do. The hand that directs gold is more powerful than the hand that owns it. The rich man fears loss. The intelligent man uses that fear to his advantage. You must learn to study the behavior of those above you. How they speak, how they flatter, how they conceal, how they reward. Every gesture, every indulgence, every contradiction reveals a truth. And if you pay attention long enough, you will see that most wealthy men are not masters of their fortune. They are prisoners of it. They obey their image, their habits, and their hunger for validation. Their power depends on maintaining an illusion, and those who understand that illusion can manipulate it. The most dangerous man is the one who does not envy wealth, but understands it. He knows that the rich are sustained by perception. Take away that perception, and they crumble. Give them the illusion of respect, and they will open their gates to you. Feed their ego, and they will mistake it for loyalty. People who possess much often lose the ability to see clearly. They hear what flatters them, not what warns them. And that blindness is your opportunity. You must move through the world like a strategist, not a beggar. When you have no gold, you still possess leverage. Your intelligence, your observation, your patience. The rich are constantly seeking advantage, connections, influence. If you can become useful to them, they will draw you in. But once inside their circle, remember your value lies not in submission, but in control of information. Never sell yourself cheaply. Let them believe they are leading you, when in truth, they are being guided by your insight. The rich man builds walls to protect himself from those he fears. The wise man without gold builds doors into those walls, through charm, through competence, through timing. When he enters, he does not demand, he influences. He plants ideas, shapes decisions, and becomes indispensable. Eventually, the rich man's survival depends on him, and at that moment, the balance of power shifts. The one who once seemed poor now holds the invisible strings of control. To exploit the rich does not mean to deceive recklessly. It means to see clearly. It means understanding that wealth without wisdom is fragile, that influence flows not from gold, but from perception. When you can manipulate the perception of the wealthy, when you can become the mirror that reflects what they wish to see, you gain command over them. They will protect you, fund you, even obey you, without realizing that the balance of power has changed. The world belongs not to those who have money, but to those who understand its movement, to those who can direct it, influence it, and weaponize it through intellect. The poor man who learns to read the fears of the rich will never remain powerless. For every man of wealth walks with a shadow behind him, and the wise know how to step into that shadow and rule it quietly from within. Wealth is not the possession of gold. It is the discipline that brings gold to you. Men often confuse fortune with ability. They see someone rich and assume destiny favored him, when in truth, destiny simply followed the one who was disciplined enough to command it. The universe does not reward laziness or chaos. It bends toward the man who moves with precision, who acts with order, who treats every decision as a matter of power. In every palace I've walked through, I found two kinds of men. The first inherited wealth and spent it like water, believing his fortune was endless. The second built his empire through strict self-control, every choice measured, every desire tempered, every action purposeful. The first man ends his life surrounded by debt and regret. The second dies with power that echoes beyond his death. The difference between them is not luck. It is mastery of self. You must understand the fortune follows structure. It is drawn to the man who can govern himself. A ruler who cannot command his emotions, his time, or his impulses cannot command a state, or even his own life. The poor often wait for opportunity, but the disciplined create it. They plan when others dream. They act when others hesitate. They rise early while others sleep, and they build silently while others speak loudly about their plans. Every act of discipline is a declaration of power. When you control what you consume, what you say, where your mind wanders, you are quietly shaping your destiny. A man who cannot control his habits will always serve one who can. Look around you. The world is filled with people who know what they want, but cannot stay focused long enough to achieve it. They are enslaved by distraction, by pleasure, by the need for validation. But the disciplined man, the one who can endure discomfort, delay gratification, and act with purpose, owns the field while the others play in it. Discipline turns poverty into training, loss into focus, solitude into wisdom. The man who lives with order, even when poor, walks closer to power than the rich man who lives in indulgence. I have seen nobles ruin themselves not because they lacked gold, but because they lacked restraint. They drank too much, trusted too quickly, spoke too freely, and spent too easily. The undisciplined destroy themselves faster than their enemies ever could. A disciplined man does not waste. Not his money, not his time, not his words. He knows that everything he spends must return in value, and everything he does must bring him closer to control. His every choice becomes an investment, in reputation, in skill, in influence. Even when the world gives him little, he multiplies it, because his structure is his power. This is why wealth must be treated as a skill, not as a blessing. Gold follows order. If you cannot manage 10 coins wisely, you will lose 1,000. If you cannot rule a day of your life, you will never rule a year. Fortune tests the hands that hold it, and it abandons the careless. When you show discipline, you signal to fortune that you can handle more. You become a magnet for opportunity, because order always seeks order. Think of every habit you allow and every impulse you obey. They are not small matters. They are the building blocks of your future. Each wasted hour weakens your foundation. Each act of restraint strengthens it. Wealth, like power, is a reflection of how well you govern yourself. If your days are chaotic, your results will be too. But if your actions are deliberate, your rewards become inevitable. The disciplined man also knows when to retreat, when to observe, and when to strike. His patience is his weapon. He does not chase every opportunity. He waits for the right one. His timing is precise, his energy reserved for moments of impact. That is why disciplined men are feared. They do not act out of emotion but calculation. They see 10 steps ahead and move with quiet certainty, while others waste their strength reacting to every impulse. Discipline is what separates the powerful from the powerless. Not birth, not wealth, not connections, only discipline. It is the invisible armor that protects your mind from chaos and your future from ruin. The man who rules himself cannot be ruled by others. He walks with calm even in crisis, because his foundation does not depend on circumstance. His power is internal and therefore indestructible. When you begin to treat every choice as part of your empire, you start to rise above the noise of the weak. Every decision becomes strategy. Every moment becomes investment. You will see that real wealth was never about accumulation. It was about control. The control of thought, the control of behavior, the control of desire. When you master that, gold ceases to be the goal. It becomes a natural consequence of your order, and those who once seemed above you will begin to orbit around the strength you built quietly through your discipline. The most dangerous belief a man can hold is that he was not meant for greatness. When a man accepts mediocrity as his fate, he kills his own potential long before the world ever defeats him. Power begins in belief. Not belief in gods or miracles, but belief in one's own destiny, the unshakable conviction that you are meant to rise, no matter where you begin. The poor man who sees himself as a ruler in the making will act with a focus and dignity that confuses those who see only his current state. And in time, his belief will shape his reality. Most people live their entire lives trapped by invisible walls built from doubt. They measure themselves by what they have, not by what they could become. They bow before those who appear more powerful, never realizing that every ruler once stood in the same uncertainty they now drown in. The difference was never wealth, never status. It was the belief that power could be taken, built, and commanded through will. The one who sees himself as destined for power begins to move differently. His words carry weight. His silence demands attention. He may have nothing, yet he walks like a man the world must eventually notice. Belief is the root of all influence. When you truly believe in your power, others begin to feel it before you ever speak it. It radiates through your posture, your tone, your choices. You stop acting like someone waiting for permission. You stop begging for validation. You begin to move with the quiet certainty of a ruler in exile, not a victim of fate. Even in the lowest moment, you hold yourself with composure, because deep down, you already see your own return. This belief does not make you arrogant, it makes you inevitable. Understand that the world reflects what you project. If you walk as though you are small, people will step over you. If you carry yourself like a man of destiny, even those above you will feel unease in your presence. They will sense the fire behind your calm and the vision behind your silence. They may mock it, dismiss it, or fear it, but they will never ignore it. The world has always been ruled by those who believed they were meant to rule, even before they possessed a single ounce of proof. This belief must not be shallow or theatrical. It must be built through evidence, through action, through learning, through endurance. Every small victory becomes a stone in your foundation. Every hardship becomes a test of your conviction. The man who truly believes he is destined for power never breaks. He bends, adapts, and continues forward, no matter how many times he is struck down. Because his mind refuses to accept defeat as final, he sees failure only as a temporary delay in his ascent. When I lived among princes, I noticed something curious. Most of them were terrified of losing what they had. But the few who were born without anything, and yet carried themselves like kings, were the ones who eventually gained the respect of all. The rich feared losing power. The self-made-believed power was already within them. One man clings to his throne in fear, the other builds his own from nothing. That is the strength of belief. To believe you are destined for power changes how you see opportunity. What others call luck, you call preparation. What others call risk, you call necessity. You begin to operate on a higher level of purpose. You no longer seek approval from others, because you understand that greatness does not ask to be recognized. It demands it through consistency. Every decision you make is guided by the image of who you are becoming, not by the comfort of who you are now. But belief without discipline is delusion. Belief must be fed by effort, refined by patience, and tested by adversity. The man who says he is destined for greatness but refuses to suffer for it is a liar to himself. Real belief survives humiliation, rejection, and loneliness. It survives the silence of years when nothing seems to work. Because deep inside, you still know who you are becoming. The belief does not die when the world doubts you. It grows sharper, colder, more focused. Carry that belief like a hidden crown. You do not need to announce it. Your actions will reveal it. The way you plan, the way you speak, the way you endure hardship will all begin to align with the image of a man who already sees himself as powerful. And when that belief becomes unshakable, the world begins to bend quietly toward it. Fortune, allies, and influence will find their way to you, not because you chased them, but because belief made you magnetic to them. Remember, every empire begins in the mind of one man who refuses to think small. Every great legacy was first just a belief that refused to die. And when that belief becomes stronger than doubt, stronger than failure, stronger than fear, there is no force on earth that can stop the rise that follows. You must understand this poverty of the mind is far more dangerous than poverty of the pocket. Gold can be stolen, status can be lost, allies can betray you. But a strong mind, one forged in discipline, belief, and strategy, cannot be taken from you. That is the true wealth of a Machiavellian soul. Never think you are poor, even when you possess nothing, because to think so is to surrender the throne of your own mind. Power begins in thought, then becomes action, then becomes reality. The moment you see yourself as powerless, you invite others to rule over you. But when you see yourself as destined, when you walk with calm authority even through hardship, the world begins to shift in your favor. Those who cry for help will always remain dependent. Those who build themselves in silence will eventually command the respect of nations. You do not need riches to be powerful. You need clarity, control, and the courage to endure. So, remember, this true power is not about what you have, but about what you believe you can command. The poor man who thinks like a ruler will rise. The ruler who thinks like a victim will fall. Choose which one you will be.